All right, welcome to class 1, session 1 of Excel Core. My name is Don. I answer to stop, slow down, hey you, say that again, didn't catch the first time around, etc. But no matter how much you yell right now, I won't be able to hear you because, well, this is a video. But because this is a video, I also know that you're going to perhaps want to ask me some questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a Zoom class or a Zoom study hour. That'll be available when we normally meet from 2 to 3. I'll be on there, so if you have any questions about this video or any other classes that pertain to Excel, go ahead and log on at that time and I will try to help you with that kind of stuff. As you might have also noticed, this is a attendance-based class. So what's going to happen is during this video, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, or I will give you a couple of questions and answers. So you don't necessarily have to know how to use Excel to a great deal. It's just going to say, hey, I'm going to ask this question. This is the answer. I'm going to flag it. I'm going to make sure that you'll know that this is a question that could be answered or asked at the end of it. And this is going to be one of a few random questions, so you can't just give it to everybody else. All right. Now, first off, if you go to the website, you should already be here right now. It says, here is the handout, and then you'll be able to continue to this video. What we're trying to do is I am trying to instruct you on how to pass the Microsoft Office Specialist 2016 class. So if you want to get this book is on Amazon right here, or if you do a search, you might be able to find it online too. Don't know, but you can get it here. So the Zoom link for the actual class time from 2 to 3 is right here. And then you could download the handout, which is what I'll be taking this class off, or basing this class off of, and then continuing to the video. All right, so that brings us back up here to Excel. So first off, this is a pants optional class. As long as we're clothed from the waist up, that should be perfectly fine for around here. And what I'm going to do first is take you through kind of what everything is here in Excel, why they did it, and making it a little easier. So first off, if you were using Excel in 2003, we knew that we had File, Edit, View, etc. We had a bunch of different ones. And they had approximately 400 menu commands in there at that time. And they said, wow, by 2007, we're going to have 600 commands. So that's going to be menus within menus within menus. So what they did was they crushed it up and they made it into the ribbon, which is also known as Fluent. So now, instead of trying to find the right command, what we're going to do is we're going to try to shepherd you through the creation of the document. So under Home, we're going to do most of the things that we would do when writing out Word or Excel. Things such as like cut, copy, and paste, different kinds of fonts, how we align our text, number stuff, insert and delete type of cells and things like that, auto format, and I'm going to go off the edge of the screen for you guys, but we just get here to sort and filter. After we put on additional stuff, then we would want to insert certain things that aren't just text, things such as pictures or shapes or charts. That's how I got started in Excel. Sparklines, equations, and symbols. After we put in all of our text and formulas, after we've inserted our pivot tables and charts, then we might want to give it to somebody else. So we would want to publish it in some way. So we're going to do a page layout. That means that we're going to change the margins, change the orientation, and do a print area of the things that we're supposed to print off and not the things that we don't want to have printed off, such as, employee salaries. Most of us will hang around in the first 3 tabs, but when we get a little bit nerdier, that's when we're going to start using things like formulas. Formulas are great things that are built into Excel that will do a lot of mathematical formulas for us. So for example, if I wanted to figure out how to sum, I could say A1 plus A2 plus A3, or I could look it up in the sum function. That's pretty easy. But we could do things such as standard deviations or minimums, maximums, medians, and modes, other things like that for statistics. So things that we would have to do by hand, we could have Excel do for us. Some of us will go off and work in a larger corporation or a company that has a database, and in there we could grab the information right from the database. Most likely we will not be able to update and make changes to it, but we could then do things such as, hey, I could find out the sum of the sales for a particular month or for a particular week, or who's doing what. Review, that's good for when we have multiple people within our organization and they say, hey, we're doing a budget. What we'd like to do is we'd like to do commands within comments within this budget saying this is pretty good, this isn't very good. So too much here, too little here. We could do different types of views within here, and then there's also help when we don't have when we need a question answered. Most likely I would use Google. All right, so most of this is the normal Excel, but I also wanted to show you something called the Backstage. The Backstage is Microsoft's new way of saying, hey, we wanted to do things on how the program operates. So when I go here to File, now I have things such as I could show the info of what's going on here. I could save it, I could print it off, I could share it, I could export it, publish it, and various other things like that. But this is known as the Backstage. Account feedback and options are also down here. So right now I'm looking at Excel. And in Excel, we now have something, what I'm showing you now is the matrix. A, B, C, D, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Columns have numbers or letters to them. Rows have numbers. In Excel 2003, we had 65,536 rows. But in 2007 and beyond, we had 1,048,576 rows. Now you can't see that because my screen is just a little bit bigger than what I can record. So let's see if I can bring it in like this. All right, that looks a little bit better. And there we are, 1,048,576 rows. This is going to be one of those questions that I may ask you at the end of the class. So please write down that this is 1,048,576 rows. Likewise, we have columns. In 2003, we had about 2,000 columns, but in 2007, we have XFD columns, which I believe is 13,000. Wow, unfortunately, 13,576 columns. Okay, so instead of the number of columns, I'm going to ask you what the last column is, which is the XFD column. And it could be in lowercase or uppercase. All right, so when I got started, when I had spreadsheets, I said that there was just one sheet in my spreadsheet. But nowadays we have workbooks, and those workbooks might have multiple sheets. Now I have sheet 1, if I added another one, sheet 2, sheet 3, etc. And I could have as many sheets as I want. This is usually RAM dependent, which is the amount of thinking power that your computer has, how much it could hold in its conscience at one time. So, and we also have different ways of looking at it. So here's the normal way of looking at it. We could also do a page layout. So how's it going to be printed off? When I click on this, I could see a bunch of different ways for each page to look, and I could add a header there, etc. Or I could also look at the page break mode. Since I haven't put anything in there, it just has this gray look to it. But as I put more and more things there, I would see breaks where the white would be, and each one of my pages would be broken off by a blue line. Also, I'll come back here, and on sheet 1, I could see that I have a zoom. You can't quite see this, so let me bring it in here just a little bit, right like this. That I'm zoomed at 340%. That means that I could zoom in and I could see this a little bit easier. I'm making this easier on you guys. But if I wanted to zoom out, if I hold down Control and roll the mouse roller bar back, the roller button, I can go make it a little bit less zoomed in. Or again, if I roll it forward, I can zoom it in a little bit further. Awesome. Now I have my quick access toolbar up here. My quick access toolbar is what happened when we went from 2003 to 2007. As I said, they had like 400 commands in 2003. They were going to get 600 commands in 2007. And let's just make that one of our questions too. How many new commands were there in 2007? And I'm going to say that 2007 had 600 commands. So the answer will be 600. You'll type that in. All right, but I'm going back to this. So they said, well, we're going to get rid of stuff, but stuff that you might want to see frequently. So instead, I'm going to have my quick access toolbar up here. So these are the things that you might use frequently, but we aren't going to put necessarily on the ribbon, such as save, undo, spell check, and things like that. But you could also click on this drop down. It looks like an upside down eject button. It gives me more things to do. And then I have one last one here that says more commands. It has 3 dots. Now I've had over 9,000 people go through my classes in the last 17 years. And I'll bet that 1/3 of those people know the real name to those 3 dots or remember those names. And that is an ellipsis. This is a Windows, Mac, Google standard. Whenever we see those 3 dots, it's not going to ask us to do something, or it's not going to do a command automatically. It's going to ask us what it should do. So if I click on this, I can now see, oh, what would you like to add to the quick access toolbar? I could do things such as save, undo, redo, new file, etc. And on the left-hand side, I have all the popular commands. But if I click on the drop-down, I could see additional commands in here, such as commands not on the ribbon or all commands. So if I wanted to put on a particular command, such as my about, I could click on this and then my add button right here, boom, and it brings it over here to about. When I close, I have a new button up on my quick access toolbar that's for about. Now I don't want that there, so if I click on the drop down, more commands, I can now say about Microsoft Excel, and I can remove that, and I'm going to remove that one and spelling. Just keep the print area for right now. All right, so that's a quick question, or that's a quick thing for Excel. And now what I'm going to do is finally get down to doing something within Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in name Frederickson, and this is play along at home, so I want you guys to do it too. Frederickson, Jones, Monroe, Peterson, and Smith. Pay rate 5, 9, 10.5, 9.5. And then hours 8, 9, 7, 40, 40. And now gross pay. While I wait for you guys to catch up, I'm going to cup of coffee. All right, now, in my feverish mind, I can tell that there are 3 questions out there. That's because also I've been doing this for about 17 years. So the first question that comes up is, hey Don, why did you start off at B3? I always start off at A1. Well, it took me a year or 2 before I could figure out why I do that, but usually it's just experience. I've done things such as, hey, I've done the bending, the wind load on a electrical generating windmill. I've done the bending of a plane wing, and I've done $1 million projects. But each time, like, I would do this really cool thing. My boss would say, hey, put a name at the top, and I would have to move stuff around. So my way of starting off away from A1 is just to make sure that when the boss asks me for something new and special, I can just do it and look cool and awesome like I deserve a raise. Now I can tell some of you are like, hey, cool, I want a raise too. So how do I get away from A1? Well, if I select on row 1 and then right click, giving me a context sensitive menu, I can see down here it says insert, which will insert a new row above the one that I've selected. Insert, one above. Likewise, if I'm here at B and I want to insert a new column, I can do that at A too, but right click, giving me a context sensitive menu, and I can insert, and it will insert it to the left of the one that I've added. Boom, right there. Now, that took 2 steps, 2 clicks, and some people out there are saying like, hey, I can do that in 1, and you'd be absolutely correct. I could select the data that I'd like to move, take my cursor, go over an edge, and when I do, I get a black crossed arrow, which is Microsoft's way of saying, hey, you can move this around. And then I can click, hold, and drag, and I can drag it around until I get here to B3 and let go. Awesome. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, hey Don, I typed in Fredrickson, and I see Frederick So. What do I need to see more of him or her? Does he or she need to gain weight so I see more of him or her? That was a joke. You might need to go back and listen to it again, but how do I see more of Fredrickson? Well, I'm going to go here between B and C, and when I do, I have my cursor is going to change to a black left and right arrow. If I click, hold, and drag away from the B, since I'm on the right-hand side of B, if I drag away from it, it's going to make it larger, and I get all of Fredrickson. Now that's going to be good for when we have 5 people, but we just don't ever have 5 people. We're going to have more like 500 people. Yikes. And this is going to be, and the last person is going to come from the very blended family of Peterson, Smith, Monroe. So if I'm all the way up here in the top, how do I know how big to make this column so that it encompasses everybody, inclusive the person from the very blended family from below? Well, when I get my left and right cursor, or left and right arrow between B and C, instead of clicking and dragging, if I double click, 1, 2, it looks down my entire list of people, finds the largest one, and it makes the column that big. Now, the follow-up question to that is usually, hey Don, that was really cool. Does that mean when I remove that person, does it snap back into place? And that's a no. So rule number 1 for me is first you make your workbook work, and then you make it look good. So put in all the numbers, put in all the equations that you need to do, and then make it look good. Otherwise, if you make it look good part of the way through, and then you do some more stuff, you might have to break what you've done, or you might have to redo it, and that's a whole lot of extra work, which I personally try to avoid. So I'm going to come back here between B and C, double click, and there we go. Last question that comes up in about 5 or 10% of my classes. I'll figure that you guys were smart enough, one of you guys would have asked. But the question is, hey Don, I typed in Fredrickson, Jones, Monroe, I typed in 9.5, 9, and 10.25. They look different. I didn't do anything different, but they look different. Fredrickson, Jones, Monroe is pushed to the left side. 9.5, 9, and 10.25 are pushed to the right-hand side. Why is that? Well, this is Excel, and nowadays, by default, most computers and various things other than Word are showing us what it can do math on. So for example, if I put in 9.5 point times 2, the computer is saying like, well, wait a second. Excel is saying like, wait a second. I don't understand what 9.5 point is. That must be text because numbers only have 1 decimal point. So as soon as I remove one of those decimal points, now for me to quickly get into that cell, I'm going to hit F2, which is above the character 2 on your keyboards. That brings it right into the cell, and then I can just backspace 1 and hit enter. So now it would be 9.5 times 2 gives me 19 in this case. All right, beautiful. Cup of coffee, and then we move on. All right, gross pay. Now, I want to get the gross pay to be done by the computer. When I was teaching my youngest daughter how to do math, what I would do is I'd say, I'm going to put in numbers here, I'm going to put symbols in here, I'm going to put in an equal sign, and then you're going to give me the answer. For a spreadsheet, it's actually flipped. I'm going to start by putting in equals. And now I want to put in the information that you want to calculate. 9.5. And then times. Times to a computer is actually Shift 8. not an x. An x won't work. So 9.5 times 38. So 9.5 times 38 gives me 361. Now, if I was Fredrickson, I would think, yeah, I'm cool, I'm awesome, I deserve a raise because I got the computer to do work for me. And instead of getting paid 9.5, if I get paid 10 times 38 should be 380 and not 361. Now, why did this show up? Well, if I hit F2, jumping back into my formula quickly again, it still says what is 9.5 times 38. So I typed in that information. So instead of typing in that information, what I'd like to do is put in the battleship coordinates. Anybody here play Battleship? You know, like B4, oh, you sunk my battleship? We're going to do the exact same thing here. We're going to say is equal to, and now instead of putting in the number, I'm going to put in the battleship coordinates. So I could see that Fredrickson's pay rate is in column C and then in row 4. When I do that, when I give it a cell location, the text that I put in turns a color, in this case blue, and I get a blue border around that cell. This is Excel's way of giving me a visual cue to say, hey, are those two what you're expecting? And in this case it is. Times, again, it's going to be the asterisk. And now I want to put in the hours. Darn, that's really hard. Is it E or is it D? I don't know. But since it's asking and waiting for a cell location, I could just click on that cell location and it puts it in automatically. So C4 times D4, notice that D4 is now red because it's a different cell and it kind of wants to make them easy to understand which one is which cell. C4 times D4, that gives me 380. Now, Fredrickson wasn't as smart as we thought, so Fredrickson's pay rate is docked down to 9.5, and 9.5 times 38 gives me 361. Awesome. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to copy that down to Jones, Monroe, Peterson, and Smith. I could type those all in, but that would be way too much work. So instead, I'm going to click on this 361, and I'm going to copy. I could copy in one of 3 ways, any one of 3 ways. The first one is to come up here to the Home tab, the 2 white pieces of paper on the left-hand side, and it says Copy. Click on this, and it will take that formula and copy it to the clipboard, a special place on your computer that says I can move information from one program to another, or within this program. The second way to copy it is I could right-click over the top of it and go down here to Copy. That's number 2. The third way is the way that I would recommend, and it's the only couple of key combinations that I ask you to memorize because these will save your bacon in different places. And the third place is just to hold down Control and hit C, as in Charlie. When I do, that copies that formula to the clipboard. Now what I'd like to do is to take that formula and make a minor adjustment so it would work for Jones, Monroe, Peterson, and Smith. Click in the middle of Jones, down here to Smith, and now I'm going to paste it. Again, I could paste it in 3 different ways. I can come up here and say paste. I can right-click over the top of it, come down there to the paste, or the third way, which again is one of those ways that I'd like you to remember, is to hold down the Control key and hit V as in Victor. Boom. That takes that formula and changes it so that it works in each one of the new positions. 351, 379, etc. All right. The question at this point is, Don, those marching ants up there with going around 361, they're going to send me into conniptions. How do I get those ants to stop marching? Well, that's by hitting the escape key on the upper left-hand side of your keyboard. It's spelled just like escape. Any Finding Nemo fans out there? Escape, swim. So anyways, escape, boom, and that disappears. Now, some of you will probably also be saying, like, Don, if you're so lazy, that took you 2 steps, and I could do it in 1, and you'd be absolutely correct. So if I take my cursor, I erased everything here, take my cursor and go to the lower right-hand side of that first cell, I could see that I have a splotch. You would think that Microsoft, a multi-billion-dollar company, the guys who bring you Xbox One and Halo, would be able to do a much better job of a border than putting that splotch there. But that splotch actually means something. If I take my cursor, go over it, my cursor changes from a fat white cross to a thin black cross. And that's my autofill handle. If I click, hold, and drag down, that does the copy and paste for me automatically both at the same time. And now they're all there. All right. Or 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. What's going on? Well, what you did was you grabbed on that cell and drug it down. So as far as Excel was concerned, oh, you wanted to make a copy of that number. What you have to do is select in the middle of the first number and drag down to the second, so that when we start, we have something called the step, the difference between the first number and the second number. So then if I click, hold, and drag down, now it goes from 1 to 19. All right. Next one, instead of just getting 1, 2, I want to do 1 and 3. I want to do all the odds. What I'm doing here is I'm changing the step. Instead of every 1, 1, 2, 3, I'm doing every other one, every odd one, 1, 3, 5, 7. Click on this, drag down, lower right hand side, click, boom. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. All right, some of you are asking, hey, does it only do numbers? Heck no, it can do other stuff too, such as, I want to do January, February, etc. It's February. No, it's February. My bad. Can't spell worth a carp. Joke again. All right, so I'm going to select on those, and then I'm going to drag it down, or I want it to go down. Now, I could click and drag down. This is pretty easy because I only see 19, but this is much more difficult if I have 1,000 or 2,000, because I'll drag it down, I'll usually slide past it because it's going real fast, and then go up and down, and I finally have to stop. But because I've done stuff on my left-hand side, if I go to my lower right-hand side of my selection, the autofill handle, and double-click, 1, 2, look at that. January, February, March, and it knew where to stop, because it says, oh, I found stuff on the left-hand side, and it stopped right here, so I'm assuming you want to stop this copy of the formula all the way down to the last one. All right, so that's January, February, March. What happens if I do days? Monday, Tuesday. Click on Monday, drag down to Tuesday, lower right-hand side, double-click, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. Awesome. So hey, let's do dates. So right now, I'll just do 4/1/2020, and then 4/2/2020. Click on the first one, drag down the second one, lower right-hand side, double-click, and this is kind of scary. I'm wondering if Excel is telling all of us to get our affairs in order by the 10th, because there is not going to be a 10th from then on. No, actually that's not the case, thankfully I suppose. What we're seeing here is it says, hey, I have these numbers here, and until we get up to this number, I could fit that number within the cell. But as soon as that number becomes a little bit bigger, 410, I get another date in there, another digit for the date, I can't fit that number into the cell. Think of it this way. If you had $1.5 million and it has to truncate that off, do you truncate the first one, which means you lose $1 million? Or do you truncate the last zero, which means you lose $1.35 million? Either way, someone's having a heart attack, and that's not a good idea. So to prevent that, what we did, or what Excel does, is it gives you pound signs, railroad tracks, octothorpes, tic-tac-toe boards, whatever you'd like to call them, to say, hey, this number won't fit within that cell. So I'm going to come up here between K and L and double click, and now I can see them all. Now, some of you will say, well, wait a second, with Frederickson, it just truncated it off, but with the numbers, it made it different. Well, it can truncate off text because, again, the difference between Frederickso and Frederickson won't give you a heart attack as opposed to losing about $1 million. So, digits, anything it can do numbers on, or anything it can do math on, anything that's pushed to the right-hand side, it won't truncate. It's going to give you the pound signs, railroad tracks, octothorpe. Otherwise, it's going to truncate it off. All right, last one. For me, I'm always trying to remember what the last day of the month is. So there's this mnemonic, 30 days, has September, go around a tree on the moon or something along those lines. You could remember that, or you could just go to Excel and ask it what the last days of the month are. I'm going to go here, 12/31, 2019, and then 1/31, 2020. Click on this, double click, select it down. Let me move this a little bit over. And it gives me the last days of the month. Now, what's cool about this is it even knows what the leap years are. So 2/29/2020, this year was a leap year. But next year, 2/28/2021, is not going to be a leap year. So Excel can also tell you the ends of the month and tell you what parts are leap years and not. All right. Now I want to get rid of the dates and all of this other stuff that I've done here. I'll select on that first date down below, click in the middle of it, and drag up to the 1. And when I want to get rid of everything, I could hit the delete key. Not the backspace, but the delete key. For most of us, it's in the gang of 6 upper right-hand side of our keyboard. If I hit delete, poof, it disappears. All right, so this is looking pretty good. But actually, what I'd like to do is I'd like to make it, I'd like to know how much is leaving at the end of every week. So I'd like to sum up all of these numbers. The first thing that I can do is I could say is equal to, and I could put in E4 plus E5, etc. Now I could do this for 5 people, that would work. For 500 people, that would be a pain in the butt, and it would even give me an error, which we'll find out a little bit later. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Home tab. On the far right-hand side is this sigma, which says AutoSum. To a mathematician, whenever we see a sigma that says sum stuff up, and when I click on it, what it's going to do is it's going to look above me, below me, to the left, and to the right of that cell, and it's going to say, hey, I found stuff above this. Is this what you were looking to sum up? So this is your cue to make sure that you're summing up the right stuff. I want to hit enter, 1901.25. Awesome, it's summing up the right things. Now, if Frederickson did finally get himself out of the doghouse, instead of getting paid 9.5, he gets paid 10. 10 times 38 gives me 1920.25. Awesome. Or, because Frederickson now dented the boss's car, it's back down here to 9.5. 361 gives me 1901.25. All right, that's pretty good. Now this would be good for the manager, but I want to give it to the CEO so that the CEO could see that I'm cool and I'm awesome and I deserve a raise. So what I want to do is I want to make this look good. Now who gets paid 9.5, 9, and 10.25? Nobody. We get paid $9.50 or $9 or $10.25. So I want to make that into money. Select those numbers, go to the Home tab, and hit the $sign. Boom. That gives me the currency accounting, that gives me the accounting format, which shows all of my $signs in order, and everything looks pretty good. I'll explain more about the accounting later. I want to do the same thing with the gross pay. Select on 361, drag it down here to 1901, $sign, and there we are. Now that looks pretty good for the gross pay and pay rate, but for the hours, I want it to be centered. So I'm going to select on those numbers. I'll come up here to my alignment grouping, and on here I can see a bunch of horizontal lines with jaggies on the left and to the right. That says center your content, and if I click on that, it is centered. Awesome. Now I want to make sure that this looks really good. This is a nice table. So I want to take this name, pay rate, hours, and gross pay, select it, and make it look like a header. Click on name, over to gross pay, right click, give me a context sensitive menu, and I'll come here down here to where it says format cells, which we now all remember is called an ellipsis. So when I click on that, it says, okay, what do we want it to look like? We could do numbers, currency accounting, but that's not what we want. We could do that other ways. But I could change its alignment. Awesome. So the orientation, it could be, I'm going to put it at an angle. So I'm going to click on the red diamond, click on this, and drag it up here to the next diamond. Now, if I'm anal retentive kind of engineering type, I could say, well, I want it to be at 42 degrees, and I don't know if this is 42 degrees or not. That's what the spinner is down below. So instead of 45, I could click down 44, 43, etc., 44, 45, and have it at a good degree. I could also shrink to fit, I could merge cells here, etc. I could change its font, I could change its border, or I could change its fill. That's going to be the background color. So instead of being no color, even though we see it as white, I want to change it to be gray. Click on gray, click OK. Now I can see name, pay rate, hours, gross pay. People at this point ask, hey, wait a second, this should all be gray. Why is the first one a little bit lighter than the rest? Well, that's just Excel's way of telling you where you started. Remember, when I click and drag down, the first one remains the same color. The rest of them have a slightly darker hue to them. And that's just what happens here. So all we need to do is click off of it. And we can see that all of them are the right color. Now, I want to take this, and if I were to print it off, I have grid lines on here, but the grid lines aren't going to print off. That's only for the screen. So instead, what I want to do is I want to put in grid lines here. Click on name, drag down here to 1901, and then on my home tab, in my font grouping, it looks like a window with a mullion on it. That's like the fake wood parts that make up the panel. But instead, if you click on the drop down, it says, what would you like to see? Bottom border, top border, left border, or I'm going to put in all borders. Awesome. Click off of it. I see name, pay rate, hours, gross pay. This looks pretty good. Now, I have 3 cells here, and in fact, that wouldn't look too good if I just printed that off. I want to make that into 1 cell, and I want to put something in there that would get me the raise. So, to take 3 cells and merge them into 1, I'm going to select on one of those cells and drag across to the other 2. Then, on my home tab, in my alignment group, there's one here that says merge and center, which will take those 3 cells, merge them into 1, and take any data that's in there, or any text, and center that. So I'll click on that, and I'll say, blood-sucking employees. Awesome. So, with a cup of coffee, I will go ahead and try to print this off. File, and then print. Something looks bad there. Since most of us are familiar with northern Minnesota, I could say that, hey, the arrowhead seems to be missing. Why is that? Well, if I come back here, there's nothing in column F. So Excel, in its infinite wisdom, says, oh, since there's nothing here, I'm not going to print that off for you so that you could save money. Now, it looks terrible. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that it gets printed off. And that is what the page layout in our print area was all about. I want to select from name, drag it down to our total pay, gross pay, and then move it over 1. Now, if I go here to print area, I can set the print area, which is telling Excel print out everything within the thing that I've selected and nothing outside of it. So when I set the print area, boom, there it is. I could tell I've set it because I have a kind of a ghostly line around everything, and everything outside of it is not going to be printed. So I could say the boss is a fink. And that's outside of my print area. So, file, print, and look at that. Something looks pretty darn good here, and you can't see the boss is a fink. All right, So that's looking pretty good. What I want to do next is, it doesn't look quite right. I want to be able to push it down towards the center. To do that, I'm going to go here to my page setup, click on this, and then the first thing it says is, how would you like to orient your page? Portrait, which is good for showing lots of rows, or landscape, which is good for showing lots of columns. In this case, the portrait will work out just fine. Now, sometimes when we print stuff off, we'll have those pages at the end with just 1 or 2 characters, etc. Well, we could also say that we would want to fit to however many pages wide by however many pages tall. So for example, if we have a spreadsheet that is 4 pages wide by 5 tall, that's 20 pieces of paper, and the last ones might have very few things on it. So instead, I could squish that down to 2 pages wide by 3 tall. I would only be printing off 6 pages, but everything correspondingly will be smaller. So that's why I said squished. So you'll have to weigh the pros and the cons. Can people read it? And what is this going to actually be used for? In my case, 1 page tall to 1 page wide should work out perfectly well. Margins. Right now, top, right, bottom, and left. And that's 3/4 of an inch. So instead of that, I'm going to put in 0.25 because, hey, this is a computer. We don't need to go with those old 1/4 inch or inch margins that we were dealing with last millennia. So first one's there, and if I hit tab, this takes me down to where the programmer thought the next thing that I would want to do. 0.25 on the bottom, left 0.25, right 0.25. So now I have 1/4 inch all the way around, and now I could also say, how do I want it to be centered? I could see something on here that looks like a grill grate. Now, if I center it on it horizontally, I'll see the grill grate move over to the right just a little bit. Click on this, moves over just a little bit. But now when I say vertically, I'll see the grill grate move down quite a bit. So vertically, oh, comes down there. Click OK, and there we are. Awesome. All right, this is normally where I would say any questions, so I'll have another cup of coffee and we'll come back here to this. I should call those coffee breaks. That's what it is. All right, now the question would normally come up at this time. Hey, Don, wait a second. How did you get all the way around your spreadsheet pretty quickly, like you were at the very beginning? All right, well, let's do that. Now, I'm here, if I'm out here at, say, G11 or somewhere else, and I want to get back to the very beginning of my spreadsheet, my input deck, what I would consider to be A1, I'm going to hold down the Control key and then hit Home. So Control Home will bring me to A1. Now, what happens if I want to go to the end of my spreadsheet? That would be Control End, E-N-D, right below Home. Control End, and there we are. So I'm at column L, which is where I had all of my other stuff when I was printing out there, and it went down to about 522, and that was where the well-blended family person of Peterson, Monroe, Jones was. Now, even though those things don't exist right now, it brought me down and it says, yep, that's the end of my spreadsheet. So instead, what I want to do is the reason that it did it was because it kind of remembers that if I were to save it and bring it back, then it would disappear and it would take it to my last piece of text or where my last piece of text would be. Now, I'm here at L522, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to get back to column A. To do that, I'm just going to hit Home. So Home alone will get me to column A of whatever row I'm in, 522. All right. Now, I'm up here on A1, and I can go up and down, etc. using my arrows, arrow left, arrow right, up and down. It can move me around. But now I also want to page up and page down. When I learned how to type, I learned that there was 52 lines on a piece of paper. So it was quite nerve-wracking when I would hit page down. I was afraid that I was going to jump, in this case, right down to 53, and I would miss everything from 12 to 53, or yeah, 53. But in this case, page up and page down means the visible page. So if I were to page down now, I could see 1 to 12 and part of 13. So page down Now I could see all of 13 to 26, and I see part of 27. Page down again, 27 to 40, etc. So I could page up and page down pretty quickly without losing anything, without jumping over it. All right. Now, last one. Again, you're like, Don, wait a second, you still haven't shown me how to get all the way down to the end of the spreadsheet. To do that, I'm going to hold down Control and then arrow down. So if I hit Control, arrow down, boom, it takes me to 1,048,576. Now, why was I able to go down there so quickly? What's down there? Well, what this means is when I hit Control down, where I started was blank. And it says everything that I've passed along there was blank or null. There was nothing in those cells until I reached the very bottom of it. And it says, yep, that's it. Now, if I come over here to B, I want to zoom up. So I'm going to hit Control up. But in this case, I'm going to start off at a blank, and it's going to go up until it finds something that isn't blank. In this case, I know that I put in blood-sucking employees at the top, so Control, or at about B9. So if I hit Control and arrow up, boom, that takes me to blood-sucking employees. Click up again, and it's going to say, hey, I found text all the way up to, in this case, B3, which is where name was. The next one after that is blank, so that would be B2. So if you want to get to the edges of your data pretty quickly, you could hold down Control while arrowing around that, and you can see that you're getting to the edges of all of your data. Now, how to select things pretty quickly too. How did I select all those people and make them to delete them? I held down Control and then arrow down, but while doing that, I also hit Shift. So while I shift and arrow around, that's going to select stuff. But in this case, if I hold down Control, Shift, and then down, that will select everything. This came out a little bit different because I've merged the last cell. So if I came down here to gross pay, Control, Shift, down arrow, and there it is. All right, we're coming up to the end. So this is a time for a quiz, so to speak. Don't worry, this should be pretty easy. If I said is equal to 8 plus 4, what would you expect the answer to be? You could take off your shoes if you need to count further. But of course, some of you are going like, yeah, it's going to be 12. That's no problem. If I said, okay, is equal to 2 plus 3 times 4, what would you expect that answer to be? The most common incorrect answer that I get is 24, because people say 2 times 3 gives me 6, 6 times 4 gives me 24. Then some of you will say 20, because 2 plus 3 times 4 will give me 20. 2 plus 3 gives me 5, times 4 gives me 20. Or some of you will go 3 times 4 gives me 12, plus 2 will give me 14. Since most of you are on Facebook and we've had those little algebra kind of things since for the last couple of years, most of you are going like, yep, this is going to be 14, and which is absolutely correct. And the reason for that is everybody who grew up here in northern Minnesota learned PEMDAS, which is parentheses first, exponents next, multiplication and division, and addition and subtraction. If you grew up in other locations in the United States, that was also known as order of operations. And we learned that in about 4th grade. So coming back here to this one, 2 plus 3 times 4, do we have parentheses? Nope. Do we have exponents? Nope. But we do have a multiplication. 3 times 4 gives us 12, and then add 2 gives us 14. If I did want that to be 20, what I'm going to do is put a parenthesis around the 2 plus 3 times 4, and that will give me 20. All right, both of those are going to be questions at the end of this, during this quiz, which is what would be 2 plus 3 times 4 is going to be one question, which we now know is 14. Or if I also put in 2 parenthesis 3 times 4, that will also give me 20. All right, I'm coming up on the end of this first hour. What was also given to me as a suggestion is that it says, hey, we'd like to work on some of this stuff. So I'm going to try to also put in a simple thing that we can do kind of just to make sure that you know what you're doing or what you wanted to do this. So I'm going to give you basically what we have here, remove a few things, and see if you can reproduce this. But that's it for right now. When you do the quiz, there's also going to be another survey for my benefit, saying, hey, what can I do better? Because I would like to make this as enjoyable for you as possible given our current situation. So if there's something that I can do to make this a little bit easier, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow.